using my new headset that they sent me from work. So it's Bluetooth, and I don't have to scream into the laptop. So I feel like Janet Jackson. Um, so let's go into a prayer and a grounding. And it's for me, and that oneness includes you. Um, I can't even get ready. I was going to say, forget about the traffic and forget about everything around you. But if you have been sheltering in grace, it could be somebody in the other room that's you just need to relax from. So fall into your chair, look at the light, smell the food, and truly know it's all God. It's all one. It's all a love, a flavor, a spice, a mixture, and one mind. That one mind I'm using right here and right now. And that same mind is the same mind that's available through you. It's living the life of God through you. So I give thanks as my word, Reverend Tony Bradford, is truly coming from the spirit that lives within me. And as I stand in the knowingness of my great health, I am complete. I'm whole and I'm perfect. And I truly know that. And I know that for each and every one of you at the sound of my voice, and I'm thankful for you joining us tonight. I'm blessing the conversation. I'm blessing the laughter. And truly, if the opening few 10 minutes or so is going to be a setup of what's happening, I know it's done. And it's done very well. So I give thanks for this and so much more. My word, as I release it into the activity of love and law, letting go, letting God. And please help me seal it by saying Ashe, Amen, and so it is. So welcome, welcome. And I had to learn how to pronounce that satsang word. When Reverend Jeff was he was a senior in ministerial school when I started. Santa Rosa started these Sunday satsangs, and I had the opportunity to go up and be a part of that. So I am honored to continue that here at Oakland Center or First Church or however we call it, the consciousness on the hill. And I'm just so excited to feel good and feel like I'm 99.9% getting back to toning. My face looks a little crooked. I think my lip didn't heal yet. But I want to continue the conversation that I started on my first Sunday in my talk, in this unchained spirituality that's heavy on my heart, and a lot of consciousness, a lot of weight on this is sweeping across the country. And for those of you who are working in offices and buildings, there's a conscious choice to craft new trainings and new ideas around people of color. Today I was in a meeting. There's a course on how to deal with Black people during a epidemic. And I'm like, really? There's a course on that now? So it's again, I'm not teaching it, and that's a good thing. So part of what I said at my talk on my talk the other day too is start to educate yourself, and I'm including everybody. Where are you at? What are you doing to help you during this this wave that's coming? So how did I come up with unapologetically me? And Google that one. You'll see a lot of books. And I wanted to attach that idea to where I'm at spiritually. And I need to stand in that spiritual knowingness of who I am. And that's part of being a Black man named Tony Bradford, and that spiritual piece. And I said earlier while we were giggling and laughing, one of the, I think it was a Wednesday night talk I did on being a spiritual unicorn. So those of you who were feeling that same thing as you were walking the world and growing up. So besides Black and gay, I just knew I was an alien, and I didn't understand what was going on. So I'm an empath, and I feel things, and I see things, and I have deja vus and premonitions, and that's a lonely place when you're the only one. So we talked about that, and I had to grow into that unicorn outfit, and be comfortable with myself, and that extra senses that I had, and that those of you who know, you get it. And I remember the first boyfriend I had, and he kind of said that to me, and I'll never forget. And he said, "You're going to be alone a lot of the times because people are not going to get you, or they're going to be afraid of you." And I just thought he was being nasty, or he wanted a free dinner or something. But I now, and I knew what he was talking about. I remember also, I just want to go, I just want to go stand in the back of the bar, with a beer and blend into the wall. I can't blend in. I never could. And that's also being a unicorn. You stand out everywhere. And then I got tall. I'm like, thank you, Spirit. Just make me 7 feet tall and get it over with. So being front and center and not being able to turn it off was exhausting. And what I'm excited about is as I got older and knew how, or learned how to craft it, and found my folks, found my people, it helped me. And it also forced me away from that Jehovah Witness I talk about. And that unchained spirituality, or let's just briefly talk about chained. There are so many of my friends and family that can't escape. They are chained to that belief, or they're chained to that family commitment of that brick and mortar church down the corner that scares me. And I've had lots of conversations, especially as a minister, or as I went through Science of Mind, number one with friends back east. And my one friend was like, I get what you're saying, and I love that stuff, but I'm got to go to my mama's church tomorrow. And and I'm thinking, this is like 2005, it's like, almost, I think it was 10 years he told me that. And that's a belief he still has, that he doesn't care what they say. He's committed more to his mama, and she has this hold on him, and she was only doing what she was taught and what she was brought up to believe. So that kind of chains hold people down, and they get confused and they can't see what's in front of them. And I remember I said in my talk how we almost got to pray for those people, or pray for the people who you don't see God in their eyes or their face, because there's a fear there. And I think I wanted to say where I even saw that too, when people are pulling guns out, and there was craziness on the news today, and I had to turn it. There's just something missing, and this gets to that thing we talk about, healing. There's nothing to be healed. It's the truth to be revealed, and I know that's a talk this week. But that's very clear now. If you know who and whose you are, you can get through a lot of stuff. So I see that, and you want to make sure you understand that. So having a spiritual weight on me too, really is a lot. I now know friends who ran from this stuff and just didn't want anything to do with it, and went the opposite end, where they ended up in some bad places. First of all, I just want to say this: you'll never see me on the street in a bad outfit. So just know, if you ever see Tony on the street, looking whatever, I don't understand that stuff. So that's my understanding, and I know my vices, but I just won't go there. And I'm not being critical, but you just know me. But with that humor and with that knowingness, I now work with people and understand the disease of addiction and how religion played a part in that. So, how did I become so unapologetic in my spirituality? Is when I started working at the AIDS Foundation, and I started meeting other brothers and sisters and trans men and women who had horrific stories on how they contracted HIV and just the brutality of being kicked out of their families and, just stepped on, spit on, and, and this was, I didn't start working there until 2003. And I just, didn't have a lot of that upbringing. And just the thought of being, thrown out of your family by being different. It can either make you or break you. And I knew I needed to get stronger, because if anybody ever came at me, I wanted to make sure I was clear on who I was. And a lot of my career, I kind of focused on that. So you couldn't even take that away from me, that I was good at what I did, and it defined me, I thought, as the man I am, and who I didn't worry about my sexuality. But when I started to put all the pieces together, I had to be confident of who I was and whose I was. And I'm so glad I found this philosophy. And how I found it when I started working at the AIDS Foundation is we came to East Bay. My boss at the time invited me, and I was mad because I didn't know what this church was that he was taking me to. But I walked in and cried just like everybody else, and I think you've heard that story. And the teachings of Science of Mind matched up the teachings and the lessons I was going around the country teaching my people, Black males and females and trans folks, HIV prevention. And it went hand in hand. And I remember teaching them, oh, you're whole, perfect, and complete, and nobody knew where it came from. But I had to also break that. Some of them were in recovery. And so that 12 step, no, you're not an addict. I wanted to change some of the language. And the more and more I got involved in Science of Mind, I knew that's where I had to be. And I needed to be that consciousness as a manager, as a leader, as a teacher. And unapologetic was a big term they used when and in when somebody's talking about my people or a cause. I had to learn how to be unapologetic to get the funds for the training for my people. And we're taught this, and I'm talking being Black, me, we're taught a lot of this as youngsters and kids, and we're given that bias. We're taught the bias that we're going to grow up with, and sometimes it, and I can only relate it to some of my Jewish friends that told me about how they're told how they're going to be treated. So I had to be an advocate to get that funding and get the thing, and Reverend Fran, I love this, get the language changed so my people understand. So if you're talking about, oh God, this used to, penises and, real nice and proper, no, that ain't how they talk about it in the hood, and I had to, and I always rocked it there. And that's probably why I'm so flippant now, only because I had to go into meetings and talk real with people. And you're not going to get to someone who doesn't understand all the language we use because it's politically correct. So there were years that I was an advocate for the trainings and for changing the paperwork. And I became one of the master teachers around the country and taught workshops. And then we changed some of the language from in Sacramento about, and again, this is where Science of Mind came, social determinants, that's a big word, and all those things that affect my community. But we went to the strength-based approach. So that was a big change, and I was part of that. And I loved and I knew this is where I had to be. And I was scared sometimes with letting people know my spirituality or where I came from or where I was going. Um, but what I also had to say, again, this is in those closed doors where people are talking money. I had to say to people, what I know about Black gay men and Black gay women, there's a spiritual piece to us. Don't discount that because again, there were so many folks that were hurt by the church, but they didn't understand that part of being Black and part of being Black gay, and I gave you examples of that, is spirituality. And one of the biggest workshops we did at the AIDS Foundation was called Brothers in Worship. And we went and think of, San Francisco is such a wealth of positive churches. We went to places of worship that supported the gay community. And East Bay was one of them. And that's how I got to come to East Bay. So again, that work I had to do. I mean, I go back to that example of carrying Atlas or carrying the world. My spirituality and my growth was important because it also helped my community or my consciousness was part of, or I know is part of the community. In ministerial school, we have to talk about, what is going to be our thing in the world. At the time, for some reason, East Bay needed somebody to focus on youth, and I forgot somebody pointed me that direction. But I knew, and I know now that my calling is to be still in the HIV field and around people of color, and now I'm doing more also in the trans community. So, but just being positive and knowing who I am spiritually, I can have those conversations with anybody, and don't attack my people or my clients. And that's happened to us publicly, where somebody's wheeling the Bible and try to tell us that we're going to hell and wherever. I know, and I know how clear and straight God is for me, and so I shut that down real quick. And that gave license to a lot of the clients to discover rediscover their spirituality. East Bay has a lot of clients that I see. The church down the street, BB Memorial. We're taking positions in churches now that used to throw us out, and Bishop Flunders is perfect for that. And she was a mentor, and I blamed her too for becoming a minister. But she was key in rocking the traditional ministers around here. And I would sit in meetings and she'd tell that story. And, she came from Pentecostal. And, they didn't even have female ministers. So that was just something that, wasn't heard of. Then she, lesbian on top of that. But she knew who exactly she was. And she didn't falter. And again, she's successful and paving the way for others and clear on who she is. So those role models, the sad thing, and I'll get into you guys speaking about this, is outside the Bay Area, it's still 40 years ago. And that's just because it's big and new and shiny and you have buses and daycare and a latte machine, does that make you closer to God? It's all an enterprise. And I missed the corner stores. Excuse me, the corner churches. And I always say this, and I told this, my therapist talked about this because we learned this. Sunday is the most segregated day of the week. You go to some place, especially your place of worship, with people who look like you. And that's why these corner churches work, because of that parish or, that 3 or 4 blocks, they were all Protestants, or they were all, maybe a race, like a Irish or Italian or whatever. So that's sort of how that fell together. This whole melting pot thing didn't happen until later on. And I remember also one thing I just quickly want to tell you. If you remember, there was a gospel choir competition here in the United States, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So when I started going to East Bay, their choir was part of these competitions. And I remember, they came in second or third. And one of the judges said, because of the variety and the look of the choir, he said, "This must be what heaven looks like." And I'll never forget that. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I know. And heaven comes in all shapes and sizes, and we all look good, and we all are one with God. So that standing in my spirituality and being unapologetic about it is so true right here and right now. I can't even, and this is why I don't want us to sleep on this, and I don't want us to miss the boat, and I don't want us to be fake about it either. This is a time to continue to do your spiritual work. I, I, I can, and I'm going to speak just for me right now. My health. A lot of you knew me, or you knew of me this past year. That wrecked me, because I've never gone through it. So, as we know, you got to go through it and get to the other side, so you can hold that consciousness for people. Back in December when I saw the video and Reverend Jeff is like, "What the hell was going on?" I'm like, I don't feel like myself, and I rushed, myself back into that, that position, or just being out there. I was rushing the process or the time I needed to heal. And for those of you who don't know, I was coming off of knowing had prostate cancer and then going through radiation. Then I had a stroke. You know, I never do those things. So the worst feeling, and now I can hold this consciousness for somebody, is when you can't move and you're afraid to go out of your house because you don't want to fall, or you got a cane, and all those things that I don't want to bring up negative for people. That it takes you time to get better at it or to get through it. I had to go through it to be able now to hold the consciousness for everyone else. So I know that everything that I go through is for my highest and my best good. So I had to stand in that. And the lesson, and this is where I want you to be strong for everyone else going through this, is that I had to go through it. You couldn't help me. And so many of you talked about, oh, what can I do for you? Bring you food or whatever. Yeah, some of that worked, but you couldn't do the physical piece for me. You couldn't squeeze that ball for me. You couldn't walk down the stairs for me. This COVID 25 pounds is sitting in my stomach. I need to work that off. You can't take that away from me. Even I watch those bot shows. But I had to get, and now I'm at a part in my life where I'm feeling physically stronger or better. So I know that'll translate off. So when I talk about being unapologetic, who and whose I am, especially in this time, and Reverend Fran, we were chatting about that a little about, and the theme this week is the truth will set you free. Continue to find that truth, and that's the lesson that I learned. This past year. Am I mad at God? No. Or the spirit, or like, why me? Why me? Yeah. Now I'm poster boy. It goes back to that whole thing I talked about, being that unicorn. You're like, really? You're gonna give me this one too? And who else is to do it? It's mine to do. So those allies and the people that stand around you, you really got to be doing your work to stand together, all of us as oneness. I just wanted to share a quote that Reverend David Alt just wrote in the email. Woo, there's some good stuff. This is about the things we say all the time in science of mind. We're whole perfect. This oneness and whatever. So he had a whole email about today, and he says, what is it? Ah, I'm grateful for collective organization. No, that's not where it is. I got to read it for. He had a lot to say, and I said I'm going to steal that. We don't. Excuse me, ministers. We don't steal. We borrow. Um, hold on. Oh God, I'm working with two computers, but you got to hear this. Oh, okay. So we teach principles, and remember when the principles that we taught, Ernest Holmes sort of had. He was a rebel. Okay, he did a lot of that was so different than everyone else, and all of you and me included, we are attracted to that, but we also had to feel it. So he writes all of our lovely, warmly stated principles: oneness, love, wholeness, abundance, peace, harmony, etc. Have radical implications that, if taken seriously, will upset some people's apple cart. And have you run into people like that? We get called airy fairy. Oh, y'all people are up in this. You're the ones up there who think you're God. That's a big one. Or you're the church up on that hill that don't talk about Jesus. So again, when you rattle the boat or the status quo, we are considered the radical ones. Everyone is on the table because everything is consciousness. This is the principle, that we have to know. So those people around you, we gotta again show them that love, and the clearer you are in your spirituality, the clearer you'll see everybody around you. Here's the one I want to leave you with. Oneness is not sameness. We don't have to get along to go along. Okay, can I say that one again? And you write this one down. Oneness is not sameness. So we don't have to get along to go along. And this also is in our own house. And I'm talking about our centers, our movement or whatever. I can only be Tony. I'm not Reverend Jeff, and I'm not Reverend Joan, and Reverend Margaret. I thought she was an angel when I first met her. And I love being her compatriot, her contemporary now. But I can only tell you, and this is how I walk through this, how this stuff has affected my life. And I can tell my stories. And I gave you a little more history on how I can be I can say penis, but there's somebody in the crowd that needed to hear that. And that's one thing I want to be clear with, even the highest, or I would say the practitioners or other spiritual people or higher. You come to church every Sunday, and the message is not for you sometimes on that Sunday that you show up. I'm up there sometimes, and Reverend Fran and I and other ministers, and we're teaching Sally, but Sally got it. You feel the energy, and you can see somebody crying, and you can see over here, there's something going over there. I would be behind when I was learning at East Bay, and I was Reverend E's pulpit assistant. She'd stop the choir because she wasn't feeling it. She was like, something's going on. I need to have them sing it again. Or I would watch her just transform, and she always talked with her eyes closed, and she would feel spirit. And then we would walk through, to the beginning, to the end of the doorway, and she would just hold my hand, and she was like, I don't know what I said, just work with, hold me up. And people would, whatever she said, they said thank you. And I learned that too. So sometimes my message is not for the people who show up every day. And I love the worker bees at Oakland Center, and the Pauls and everybody, because you know what your strengths are. And that's part of being you, unapologetic for your strength and your spiritual knowingness. I'm the same way. I'd rather be in the kitchen cleaning, or if you invite me to a party, I'm in the kitchen. I just can't sit around and do that. But that's me. But understand that and your consciousness, and we need to walk together. And this one's important, that oneness is not sameness. So what Reverend David is saying is, understand where you're at in this whole movement, and what is yours to do, and how are you feeding yourself spiritually to get through this next, I don't want to call it a war, this change a coming. And that's how I said it, because it's coming. And in my lifetime, I cannot believe some of the changes that's happening. And this is a big one. And so my therapist, quickly, I'll get to you all. Um, he went past Oakland. He said, I didn't know what that place was over in the corner. So we were talking, and I was giving him the history. And it's so nice to finally have somebody that I can talk to and share some of the um, things that I go through. He's down with us, down with me spiritually. He's a black man, and he's not gay, but we understand sort of this. He's my people, he's my tribe, and even colonialism. We had a conversation about that, and the Bible, and how it was held against you, and the slave mentality, and that was the only thing we were given. So when I see my people still chained to that philosophy, and they won't move, and I understand that. That I have to stand strong for me in what I know, and that's where I need allies, and that's where I need people to walk with me, and that's sort of where that comes from. So my question again to you is, how do you stay unapologetically spiritual? You're grounded. I don't want to have to do a litmus test on everybody, like, show me your your spiritual practices. But I want to hear, how you're feeding yourself, because you need to be strong at this time. We can't waver. We can't, because it means so much. Again, I'll go back to my therapist. We know the wave is coming, and I talk about this all the time. When President Obama, we knew he was going to win the nomination, let alone the presidency. We felt that, and a lot of us felt it, and he felt it. We talked about that. So I kind of feel that same thing a coming, and it's pointing. We had to go through all this craziness to get to this, and just how I shared my health, I had to go through that healthy shit. That's what we call it, to get to where I'm at today. I understand it now, and I can stand strong for what's coming, and why we had to go through that. And just like any big tragedy, and I forgot what class it was, but um, uh, Barbara and Sherry and Alice, we talked about the people that had to die in slavery, and early parts of HIV, and all those people, and we had to build on their shoulders, and let's let them not die in vain, if that's a saying. But it's all God, and it's all part of this change that's coming. And I'm not going to call it a big flood, but those examples of big flood is to help you understand how big God is. So I'll shut up. I think uh, this is a conversation, but I wanted to share that, and I thought it was important. Tell me, what do you do spiritually? How are you standing up? How are you working your spiritual community, especially Oakland now? Um, I see it. First of all, my biggest thing, Reverend E I used to stand there with her too, and people would come up and want to talk to her or complain, especially people who were working or volunteering or practitioners. She'd give them something to do. Oh, that bathroom need clean. You want to complain about something or whatever. Don't come to me with the question. Come to me with the answer. And I didn't understand it to have my own church. And somebody would come to me. I'm like, could you pass out the flyers, or go do something. You need to do something, because I need you to stand strong for me and for this center. So anyway, I'll open it up. Sherry, Alice, we just talked about picking people out of the audience, and poor Sally has been picked on for a lot. But we've had this conversation in our classes, and I respect and love all of you, especially the unicorn thing. how do you're growing up different, especially spiritually, and you have these superpowers, and how do you walk the world? And do you turn into a guru, or you find your tribe?
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that if someone wants to, they can either raise their hand or just unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm not picking them. I'm just chatting. I
Of course,
can't see the hands.
you were suggesting maybe Alice or
Alice or Sherry or Sally. I'm going to pick on you too. Where'd she go? Yeah, and poor Sally, we given her direction. It's like, what did you sign up for being a minister? Oh, one more thing
Okay.
too. We talk about every minister or spiritual person. What did you lose? This stuff, it makes you give up, and it gives up people. I lost half of my friends. They weren't friends, but when I changed spiritually, they had to go, and that's not a negative thing. And boy, a lot of relationships I saw through ministerial school. You came in with somebody, and you left with somebody different. But as you change, the people around you have to change. Hi,
okay.
Sally. Sorry, I'll shut up.
Oh, don't be
I
sorry.
see you smiling.
Yeah, I love you, Reverend Tony. You are so unapologetically spiritual, and you are definitely my mentor and somebody that I look up to. So thank you for this conversation. I
You're
think
welcome.
the invitation for us to be unapologetically spiritual.
Mhm.
If I want to go out there and feel hopeful and happy and know that there is
Mhm.
good coming from this,
Mhm.
well, by God, I'm going to do that because that's what I believe.
Mhm.
And you kind of asked, what helps keep you grounded
Mhm.
and connected with spirit. And for me, it's always been my creativity, right? Me and my crochet hook.
Mhm.
I'm always doing something with me and my crochet hook because in that process, I get to see that there's times when I have to rip something out. And
Mhm.
it's okay because in the process of ripping it out, I see where the mistake was and I can rebuild it better. So I'm ready right now
Mhm.
for us to rip some stuff out. Okay, I'm done.
I love that. No, and you creative people, you know that this is this is cathartic for you. Uh, I think I tell you the story all the time about, well, not all the time. When I discovered, well, not discovered, drum and bugle corps, for example. When I first won the world championship, and uh, you realize that you're with people who think like you, who work as hard as you do, and you are bought into the vision of these directors and people. And when it comes together, it's I just remember the championship night. We were floating. We were all one. When they talk about that oneness, when you're a marching band unit and everybody is on all cylinders, it's the best drug. It's just great. And I totally get now when theater people, talk about that adrenaline rush that they get when it's on. So you creative types, talk to me. Okay, Zoe, I'm calling you.
Okay. So yeah, I am one of those people that is definitely unapologetically spiritual.
Mhm.
Um, the way I've been dealing with that lately is on Facebook. I look at I look at the wonderful things people from the left say about the people on the right, and I look at the wonderful things the people on the right say about people on the left. And I sat down the other day and I was thinking, well, I'd really like to respond to some of these things.
Mhm.
And I thought better of it. And I thought
Mhm.
instead what I should be putting out there is something that is unifying, not something that is going to further the division.
Mhm.
So that's what I did. And it sat there for a while. And lo and behold, it started picking up more and more people, and people shared it. And it was like, it was great. It was just a wonderful feeling. I just today, someone that I haven't spoken to in a while contacted me and he said, your posts really helped to center me.
Wow,
Like,
that's a good.
that was
Yeah.
such a wonderful feeling.
And there's so many closeted people that and yeah, it's like it is. It's scary sometimes to be different and to voice something that's not popular or or not radical, but you know what I mean. And when it finally you find your other people, the tribe, it feels good. So thank you for that. I try to stay off of I can't. I deal with my family. We have like a family Facebook post. Yeah, that's a whole. I'm the minister for them. You guys don't see that one. Sherry, you had your hand up.
See, how do I do this? Can
I hear you.
I have to start my video, or is that going to be started for me? The hostess has to start it.
Well, you don't need it on, Sherry. You can just.
Oh, okay, good. I don't want to look at myself. Thanks, Tony. I love what you said. And
come on, unicorn. I thought of you. As soon as I thought to say that.
Yeah, I know. I love what you said about we go through things so that we can turn around and help somebody else. And that gives a real perspective to things. I too have had a diagnosis, as you know, and it's been 6 years. And every day's a gift. So I don't count on anything, but I try not to dwell on it. And I've been able to help others who've gone through it. Lots of different issues. But I'm a seeker. I'm always wanting to evolve into something more. And they wanted to do that. They all, they knew and they knew it, and that was it. So I was always feeling on the outside. Until I found Science of Mind and came here, like you're saying. I think that's true for a whole lot of us. Finding a tribe that, oh my God, it's a relief. Right now I'm doing a lot of things. I'm what do I want to say? Reintegrating my Catholic background. And I'm doing it from my belief. I couldn't buy the church, but I believed in the Christ. And so I'm going back, taking our Andrew Harvey class on the real Christ. And I'm taking a class on St. Thomas Aquinas and his ideas from that time till now. And it's stunning to me that in 1600, in the Black Plague, I'm going off task, topic a little bit, but in the Black Plague, the same issues were happening as they are now. The anti-mask people were fighting the mask people. And the division between the right and the left. And I'm thinking, my God, we have come like a snail in 400 years. And yet, I have to, and I do believe that right now we are in these turbulent waters because that's the only way we can evolve. It's not going to happen. I think it was Reverend Eloise said that. It's not going to happen in calm times.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just being, and I'll close by saying that I have a friend in Sweden. They don't do religion there. And she wrote to me just today and God, how will I possibly, And I don't have to worry about it. It just is. And what needs to be said will be said. So Tony, thank you for today.
You're welcome.
And for being so real again.
Yeah, thank you. And I know you're like me. The biggest gift I got to, and being a seeker and sensitive to things around you. And I was taught, the Jehovah's Witness that, this fear of the other side. And
right.
I don't have that. And even, and that's a strength. You know that. And, my ether, all of us, we're going to be spread all over the place,
Right.
Shit. Think about it. How do they? It's 2020.
The time is
Let's
now.
just go there. Right. I remember, I thought, God, I'd be so old. Yeah, I feel like I'm still a kid in my head, you know. And again, this is the unicorn family. When you are, you know, and Reverend E taught me that when she first told me she was what 81, Reverend Fran. You know how many years she kept going. She's like, I don't know the age of my kids because that'll age me. I'm like, I like that woman. But it's not a negative. It's just I feel the same way. It's like I am not. How did I get this old? But
Yeah,
uh,
it takes time. It
yeah,
takes time, and it's okay to be different.
exactly.
It
As my
is.
doctor said, decades of use. Okay, I want more.
So
So,
Tony,
anybody else want to raise their
yeah,
hand before
it's
we?
Constance. I'd like to say something.
Hey, Constance.
So on Monday, we did the visioning group,
Mm,
and there were only two of us there that night, and it was wonderful because it was very
mm,
rich, and we got a real opportunity to talk. But one of the things that we talked about, the woman that was with me was an African American,
mm-hmm,
and we started talking about what had happened at the open forum.
mm-hmm,
And the question came up, if we're creating a village that works for everyone, where's there a place for someone like that person who came in and started
mm-hmm,
writing racial slurs and putting sexual symbols up and what have you?
mm-hmm,
You know, and that yes, that the behavior isn't okay, but we have to have space for that person.
mm-hmm,
And and the other thing that happened recently, because I've actually got um, a, 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 a mystical side to me that I right now,
mm,
because I have to stay in my left brain so much with a job.
mm-hmm,
It's sometimes hard to connect with that right now. But I watched a video. Someone posted a video on Facebook called The 12, and I reposted it and I watched it. It's very long. It's over an hour.
mm-hmm,
It's about 12 Aboriginal elders and wise people who were from all corners of the earth who came
mm-hmm,
to the United Nations and were meeting in council. And and this was in 2017, and there were pictures of them standing at the Hudson River. I don't, maybe it was East River, I'm not sure which one, but and they all had different traditions, they all had different ways of contacting the spirit world, but
mm,
that's what every single one of them did, was contact the spirit world. And they were all praying for the United States and for the people in it that we can heal. And then it just struck me that it's now 2020, and
mm-hmm,
here we are in the United States. There are very few places we can travel in the world anymore.
mm-hmm,
And there are places we cannot even travel within the United States. And it's like, it's like we say, you make your prayers and you have to let them go because you don't know what that outcome is. And so I just have to know that that's good, that somehow we're being that wall got built and it got built around us. It's keeping us in. And we have to learn to get along with each other.
mm-hmm.
Somehow we have to learn this. And that's and so it's like, how do we learn to get along with someone who comes in and tries to disrupt our meeting? And how do we learn to love people who we think are so different from us? So
Uh, Quickly, I got a new boss, and I think you've all heard about that. And he said to me after like a week or two, "There's just something about you that, that's just so people come to you and say things." But back to some of the issues that clients come through, whether they're addiction, which I understand, mental illness, just stress. Um, I see them and I love them, and I'm one of those ones that I'll go out and say hi to everybody in our lobby, and even the people that live on the street and they smell like, whatever. I don't see that, and this same person, and this is how I think about it. First of all, thank you for picking us, because there's something that he, that made him or she connect to us. But that goes back to that comment I said about seeing God and helping these folks see it. If you want to be kinky, there's a whole bunch of places to do that safely. But if you knew who you were and whose you were, you wouldn't bother us with it. So how do we hold that consciousness of truth for that person? That's part of our spiritual work, and he picked us, so that's ours to do, and that's kind of how um, I deal with that at work. I I don't know if it's Chantel or maybe in my head. I love her connection with a lot of the spiritual stuff, and we were talking about that. And I said, you know what I do? And a lot of people don't know what we actually do. I said, besides working with the the clients, policy and the International AIDS Conference last week was amazing. But we're so fortunate here in the United States. But I gotta, and I've done that in my consciousness. And again, I'm where I'm at. But to see some of the change and what other countries has moved and gotten through, just blew my mind. Where they were 10 years ago, the first conference I went to. So we learned a lot with HIV, and it's teaching us a lot with COVID-19. So that truth and that love that we had for the naysayers or some of the countries that still kill people because of their sexual preference is getting better. And here's one I just want to give you an example. I was watching one of the countries, and they were presenting. So one way that they were able to talk about HIV only, because they couldn't tell the men they were doing anything wrong, was women and children. And now they're in this country, they have areas where men are now concerned about their health, and they want to know about, well, what's out there for me, my sexual health. And it just blew me away, because it's always a male thing, and he's doing it because he didn't want to hear about it. Now they're they're like, hey, we weren't at the table when we first discussed this. We now are concerned. We want to be part of it. That alone blew me away, and that's the consciousness that had to change. And so many people sent those good vibes to those particular people, because you needed these guys to start to feel something needs to change. And I call it metrosexual too. I bet they look good too. I think I knew outfits. But whatever it is to get you going. But that was just a plus thing that came up to me. But I hope that answered some of your questions. If anybody else has any more
I had a
ideas
thought.
about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hi, Reverend.
Hi there. I wanted to comment on Constance's contribution, and thank you very much for what you were saying, Constance, because I so resonated in my heart with what you were talking about. As you were describing, how do we make welcome, or how do we create a space for that person who interfered with our forum meeting, so that the person can be, I don't know, you didn't say love, but maybe that's what I interpreted out of what you're saying. But what came to me, so I don't have an answer, I just have some more question to add to your questions, Constance, and for all of our considerations. But I remember how welcoming the congregation members were, who were sitting around praying at Mother Emanuel Church with that young man who they made welcome, and who ended up shooting them all. And so what came to me is, how do we open our hearts enough to understand what the intention is of those who show up, and if they are showing up just to make noise, to interfere, and to cut down the spiritual work we're doing. I'm trying in my own heart and my own mind to make that different than what that man was doing when he was praying with them, speaking with them, and then killing them all. And so I'm not convinced that everybody that shows up really wants to be a part of the community. And though we may have forgiveness in our heart, even for the man that was a shooter, and forgiveness of the person who shows up and scratches all over our screen.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
That's a hard one.
Where's our therapist in the room?
Well, I don't claim to have an answer.
Yeah.
But I think I wanted to raise that question because even though there may be some who would interfere and then somehow really want to be welcomed, I just remember that experience in Mother Emanuel when all of us grieved the loss of that member of that prayer group. And I began thinking that some people do not come with an intention to be unified with the group. And so and though I know that that infinite spirit is within all of us and everywhere, I do know that some people haven't found that wisdom, love, and compassionate space within themselves, and they show up with an intention that is not necessarily for the highest good of all. So, but thank you for bringing that up, because I'm going to pray about that.
And yeah, and what I want to offer also too, and this is kind of the same conversation when we talk. And I remember Reverend Fran having foundation class and talking about rapists and murderers and how do I forgive somebody who did that. And that was some of the hardest conversations to have, and especially I remember watching practitioners and Reverend E and how they answered it. And that's one of those things that even I deal with at work now, and how I have young staff who it takes years to get immune to some of what you see, but if you hold them in the highest and I just go back to those shoulders that we have to be part of, that go ahead of us, and those folks were doing that's what they do. They were praying, and I don't forget. You forgive, but that I know somewhere it changed somebody, whether it's a law or whatever. So, and I got to stick with that, and somebody asked me about all the people that are, who gets sick with COVID-19 or I'm like, it's like a roulette, but that's the same as, when it's everybody in the same plane goes down or whatever, I go back to even when I lost my sister, I'm like, why? I was so mad, but why not her? So that's a tough one. So all the stuff that we do spiritually, keep doing it.
So Tony, I just wanted to say that one of the things that I've thought about since Sunday is that, well, first of all, that I want that whoever that person was, we can thank them because what it gave us was an opportunity to go in and up the security on our Zoom calls so that it may not happen again. And the other thing is, I remember something Reverend Joan used to say when she would welcome people on Sunday. She said, "You're here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime." And we'll never know. I mean, I was so proud of the way that we dealt with that.
I was too.
We'll never know how that, we may never know how that impacted that person. And it may impact them in a way that helps them move beyond wherever they're at. And, so that's sort of where I stay with it is like, all we can do is be love and be stay in that strength of spirituality that we know, and deal with people in the best way we can, and just let it go, because we'll never know. We may never know what impact we had.
And I wish a lot of you could go to work with me, but you can't. But that's exactly what I see a lot, and you have to see the person before you see what they're going through, and sometimes it's hard when they're acting out, or all of a sudden 5 minutes later they're doing something else and it's not them. And not everybody gets to see that. And
can I
Reverend Tony, Marie.
Hi. How are you?
That's good. What's up?
Good. Well, I mean, one thing is that you guys are mentioning whatever happened on Sunday. I'm curious to know what actually happened. That's one thing. And then also, with regards, kind of going back to showing up spiritually, with the defund the police movement, I've really tried to become more active in the Black Lives Matter movement too, but specifically the defund the police. And you know, I am noticing on the Facebook groups of people that are in this movement, I don't agree with all the things they say.
What did I just say? What, you know, oneness is not sameness. You
Right.
don't have to get along to go along, right?
Right.
And
so
you got to be clear on what, why you're there.
And so I've already said a couple of things that don't match up with other people, and it's been, you know, I'm like, well, why am I doing this? Why am I, you know, getting into this? But I do feel a calling. So until I don't feel a calling to do it,
right,
I'm going to continue to do it. So.
And thank you for saying that. And I want to give you a little how I kind of handle that. So when I say, when you hear people say defund the police, what I also, in my mind, is the guy down in Atlanta, for example, that was in the parking lot looking, he could have been having a health issue. You know, you teach, and because I like teaching and giving people education, where's the compassion? He might have been having a health issue, and you think this guy is acting, you know, acting whatever, I better watch him. You know, where is the, hi, sir, do you need help? You know what I mean? And that's what we are, all of us as human. We want our family to be able to, or somebody, to, especially an officer, to ask if we need help first before, you know, you're pulling out things. So when I had a whole conversation with somebody, I said, that's what I want defund, or I want funds to go to training like that. And then this person realized what I was talking about. You know, I reiterate the walk and the talk and being the voice of God. I am truly, truly grateful and thankful for each and every one of you. And there was so much coming up for me of how we can go through those gates that Paul beautifully has put up and share what we do and know virtually now for the world and everybody in Oakland to feel this good stuff that we feel. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity for us to do something different at Oakland Center for Spiritual Living. And how do I lead that and walk with each and every one of you? So I give opportunity and thanks for what was said, what was shared, what was laughed, and what was cried. We are lifting and loving each and every one of you, and I'm just so proud to be your friend and your minister. I give thanks for this, and I give thanks for tonight, and I release just good and very good for each and every one of you into the law, and just say yes, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Reverend Tony, for another Wednesday night Oasis.
Fun time.
You can,
and I want to see that blow up doll this guy posted on.
No, Tony.
Sorry,
Tony, I'm Team Tribe. No, you don't. No, you.
You know, if you're gonna post something like that, make it a good one.
No, it wasn't, sadly.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We bless and release.
You do.
They're at different levels.
Constance like, well, we ignored him.
Well, we'll just pray he comes back next Sunday with an offering that's more than that.
Yes.
With a George Washington on it. So if y'all want to say goodnight, this is our chance to go into gallery view and say goodnight. I thank you for being here. Every one of you are the best. And I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Sally. You're going to offer prayer. Okay. Good night, y'all. Good
night.
Thank you, Paul.
Good night, everyone.
I look at it.